on the phone via telephone and conferencing, so she'll be part of the meeting, just to let everyone else know that we do have a full 5 board members here. With that, if we could begin with a silent prayer. Thank you. Can we stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the order, please.
Mr. Benton?
Here.
Mrs. Davis? Here. Mrs. Thomas? Here. Mr. Swagger?
Here.
And Mrs. Brewer is here.
Announcements, visitors, comments?
Yes, I have
We have assignments.
a few items here by way of agenda changes that I want to bring to your attention.
We have
that-
someone signed up?
Yep.
that are on the agendas that you have here this evening, but we're not on Fridays. If you go to the
Hey,
third-
Dale, hold on. We do have one public comment. Do you want
Okay.
to start with that? Or
Do you want
have
to do
something?
announcements or? Either way, we can have them speak first.
Yeah, if we don't mind.
I don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't mind.
Step on up, Kathy.
I think they're going to get it here.
Can you hear us, Ruth Ann? I heard her. That's fine.
Mrs. Benton?
You need to speak into the mic.
I'm a teacher. I'm used to being in front of kids, so this is kind of intimidating. But I just wanted to let you know, when I started in education, well, in the 1970s
I will
was
be
when
downstairs on Facebook.
in the 70s when special education laws were passed. That's when things started rolling, and I started in college in the 80s. And I remember a professor telling me that it didn't really matter what I did because anything I did was going to be better than nothing. And somehow that was comforting. I'm not sure why. But I feel like I just had a year like that again, where anything I did was better than nothing. But I want you guys to know from a teacher that I am so thankful for what you guys have done for our community, because what you did was keep things going. My students are not ready for the next grade. Your students are. And you guys pulled it off. I think your administrators, your team, your faculty, your staff, everybody just deserves such great thanks. And I'm not a great speaker. I don't have things planned or prepared, but I just wanted you to know that I thank you. And I know a lot of people in the community thank you too. And that's what I have to say.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We
Thank
feel
you,
the
Kathy.
same about the staff and the administrators here. It was, I think everyone knows it was a phenomenal year for us to be able to accomplish what we did this year. So we too thank everyone, and parents too, because it wasn't easy on parents to make a lot of decisions. And as a community, we came together and we're very successful. So I thank everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Dixon?
Changes to the agenda. Thank you, Kathy. On the third page under item 10B, I want to bring to your attention, originally it was printed December of 21. This is a band trip for the December of 22. In the coming year, they'll be raising funds in order to go to that trip. So when you approve that trip this evening, under item 10B, you'll be approving the trip for December of 2022 as opposed to this coming December. Under
It's
item-
9B, just to make sure. Yeah.
Yes,
Item 9B, just never confused. It's 9B. We're good.
it's 9B. Did I
Yeah.
not say 9B? I'm
You
sorry.
said 10.
I said 10. My apologies.
We're good.
Under 9C, you have a maximum amount listed there. I do want to clarify, and we can have some more discussion when we get to that item. We did find out today that that project would qualify for ESSER funds to cover those costs. However, given the federal guidelines that any project over $2,000 would require prevailing wage, we estimate that the difference would be another $9,600 So we would say if you chose to pay for it out of ESSER funds, we would rather put the ceiling at 129.6, or if you want to round off to 130, I would go ahead and approve it there if the board so chooses to go that route with the funding. Want to clarify that. If you were to go back to item 10L, there was a typo in the original Friday agenda that came out under Mr. Carter as weight room supervisor. It was originally listed as a different grouping, as group 1. It is a group 2 approval. That is as it is currently for him. Okay. And I believe we have one more, and it is the addition to bring to your attention under item P, 10P. And that was the addition to employer coordinator of student services, which I introduced heretofore. Those are the changes that you will note in the agenda that was given to you this evening versus what you received on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we on to the treasurer's report then, or do we have any student? Somewhere. Treasurer's report.
All right, so we have minutes from May 10th, and I believe we also received the May 24th minutes. They are not listed on here, but I think everybody has them, so we can have them if that's what you wish to do. You should have all received the May 2021 treasurer's report. This would be the final appropriations and estimated resources for fiscal year 21. And I'm also asking for approval for temporary appropriations for fiscal year 22 until we get the permanent ones set up in September. This allows us to pay our obligations in July and August until we get the permanent ones set up. There are several donations for the broadcast studio and for the various scholarships. And then our annual transfer from the general fund into the capital projects fund for capital needs, buildings and grounds, and also the money we've been setting aside for turf and track.
Sounds great. Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Well, first, I forgot, do we want to amend this motion to include the May 24th meeting minutes, the ones we received?
Yeah.
Can I get a motion and a
Yes,
second to do
I'll
that? Amend.
second.
So we'll amend that. Discussion. Sorry about that.
I was just going to say thank you to the donors for our scholarships. I also see a really awesome donation for the middle school robotics team by BSHM, so that's really awesome, and I'm sure they'll be very happy to have that. So thank you to all our donors, and appreciate the books to the library.
That's fantastic.
Just want to thank everyone too for the donations. That's great. And I have a question to Kim on the buildings and grounds for the 6th, 7th, and 10th. Or even the stadium. The stadium is the money
track
that
and
the
turf.
board sets aside or the school sets aside. Right.
Okay, yes. The buildings and grounds, we're setting aside money for future repaving of parking lots, and also setting aside money for the future likelihood that this district will need a building at some point in the distant future. But we want to have as much set aside for it as possible.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we started doing that a few years ago where we started setting aside money. That way it's not a shock to anybody when we have those costs come up. We have a little bit of money in there at least to set aside. So I do appreciate previous boards starting that trend. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swigert?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Are we able to?
I think she's last comment.
Dan, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
The feed's about 3 seconds behind.
Yeah.
Probably get your feedback.
Do you want me to to call on my cell phone rather than?
If it'll clean it up for her, make it easier for her.
Because she's on a delay, so she's hearing the question 3 seconds later, perfectly. She's trying to answer my
If you would mind to tell her to hang up that one, and I'll call her because I'm calling her.
Hey, Ruth Ann?
Gotcha. Hang up, right?
Yeah, if you could. Ann's going to call because you're on a delay.
Yeah, can you tell?
Turns the screen.
Gotcha. Hang up, right?
Yes.
I did.
Yeah, just hang up.
I did.
She knew it was coming.
Hi, you can hear me? Okay. We think you need to hang up on your Facebook, close that, and then we'll keep you on speaker on my phone, okay? Okay, and then I'm gonna put you on speaker. She said, Amanda said you put your cell phone.
So she wants me to.
And then when it's time to vote, I'll make sure you know it's time to vote. There's a delay. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right.
Yes, please.
And if she speaks in, just bring that mic right
Okay.
Let
Can
her
you
know
hear
she's-
us? Can you hear Tim?
Ruth Ann, can you hear me now? Okay, we'll go like this. Just realize that you are not muted if you want to mute yourself, or otherwise we'll hear everything that occurs at your house right now. All right. Thanks. All right, Mr. Dixon, Superintendent's report.
Yes, this evening I just have a couple items here. First, I'd like to introduce a couple candidates that are here this evening, whom you'll be voting on. It's something very nice for you to take the time to come in and be here this evening. I'd like to start with Chris Almendinger, who has our middle school math position. Ryan Apis. Chris? It's great to have
Fantastic.
you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Ryan. And I would ask that each of the next candidates, if you would step to the podium and speak into the mic so the folks watching remotely can hear you. I apologize, I didn't tell you that, Ryan. So next, I'd like to introduce Miss Laurie Cohen. Laurie will be our new English as second language instructor for the school district, K through 12. And I'll let Laurie introduce some aspects regarding her education and current experience.
Hi, I'm Laurie Cohen, and I'm a mom, and I'm a musician, and I'm a gardener, and I'm an outdoor activities enthusiast. I have a bachelor's in music ed as well as a TESOL endorsement, and I am currently in the master's program at Otterbein to enhance my TESOL endorsement with a master's in education and curriculum and instruction. And the last couple of years, I've been teaching at a charter school in Columbus, lots of different cultures. And one of my exciting parts of teaching is advocating for all kinds of kids from everywhere, all over the world.
Great. Laurie brings with her a wealth of experience and loved her ideas, and really looking for her to come in and engage with our students and really help us along. So welcome, Laurie. That's one of our newest Johnnies sitting before you there. So welcome.
Yes, welcome. Certainly a growing population here for us to service as well, so you're much needed and appreciated.
Next, I'd like to introduce the newest candidate I brought before you this evening, and that is Guy Williams. Guy, if you come up to the podium. Guy Williams, I'm recommending to you this evening to come to us as our new Student Services Coordinator, which will be overseeing all the special needs services for our students. And I'll let Guy speak to his qualifications. Guy?
No qualifications. I don't think I'm qualified for this at all. But I've actually spent the last 3 years in Southern Perry County as a special education director. Of course, a lot of very serious needs down there, both financial and special needs wise. So been in Licking County my entire life. I live in Hebron. We lived in Hebron for about 12 years now. Spent a lot of time teaching at Heath Middle School. Taught out there for about 11, 12 years. Taught every subject at the middle school at one point or another. I spent a year as an assistant principal at West Muskegon Middle School, and then 3 years as an assistant principal at Jackson Intermediate at Lakewood, which is where I graduated. It's pretty weird being an administrator at a place where you graduated, so 3 years was enough, I think. So very happy to be here. Very happy to work with all the administrative team, Mr. Dixon. You guys seem to have very professional atmosphere. It's very welcoming. Feel very welcomed already. So looking forward to a good year and hopefully a good tenure here at Johnstown.
And Guy is actually being very modest. His ideas were incredible. And I think that he's going to bring some really good programming for our students, information for our parents, and just really look forward to working with you. We've enjoyed our 2 interviews and an independent discussion that we've had, and I am sure that you're going to be glad that you're bringing Guy on as your newest Johnny.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Swager, you had asked that we entertain a discussion relative to some of the athletic data that we've been working on this year to gather and try to get a good baseline of our entire athletic department program and how that might lead to help us make decisions when we're looking at teams being added or teams staying or coaching positions. So I basically had this under superintendent's report so that we could just have an open discussion this evening. Hear questions that you have. You saw I created a baseline spreadsheet and shared that with Madeline Travis earlier in the spring. She has worked on this. She's gathered data from our treasurer. And some of that data from the treasurer came from our previous athletic director. And she's trying to mesh all this in and try to gather information from our boosters club as well to get us to that baseline from which we can make some decisions going forward. So I'll just open it up. And Tim, if you want to outline a little more with this topic.
I appreciate that. I think as a board, we've been kind of, when it comes to the coaching positions, supplementals in general, athletics, how many people do we have in it? How do we adequately staff between volunteer coaches and paid coaches, and making sure that our numbers are good across the board and fair and equitable. That way, we're not employing more coaches in one sport versus the other. So that's what the impetus of the spreadsheet was, is to really look at all of those sports and go, okay, and then be realistic, though, that each year, if the numbers rise and drop, as we've seen in some sports, that we've got to adjust our needs and costs as the district. And I don't think it's any secret that we've got a few issues that we're trying to deal with openly. We've dealt with wrestling here for a while, trying to decide One of the things I've talked to Madeline and Dale about is having the wrestling conversation about what our expectations are to be a successful program. What does that look like? How many students? So that's one of the things we're looking at now when it addresses the wrestling program. But that goes with all the programs, though. You know, as numbers go up and down, we really have to be flexible in the amount of staffing that we provide to make sure that the students are adequately supervised. But we also want to have that conversation with the community about we need volunteers. I mean, everyone up here, our district, we have paid positions, but this district flows in everything we do because of the volunteers that we have in this community, be it musicals, band, football, baseball, whatever sport or activity it is. This district thrives on volunteerism, and we're always going to have a need for volunteerism to make these programs work. So the spreadsheet that they're working on and that was provided to everyone on the board initially is really just to start that conversation so everyone can look at them and really have a fair comparison of the number of athletes, what it costs. I've been looking at the pay-to-play fees and making sure those are adequate, and if there's any adjustments needed up or down, if we can, I'm always trying to decrease our costs to our athletes, and we're trying to reduce those pay-to-play, and we really want to look at opportunities there. If there's other ways to supplement those, to bring those down, that's what that spreadsheet's for, is to start having those conversations. I know everyone just kind of got it this weekend, but I don't know if anyone has any other questions at this point, but really just want you to start looking at that, digesting it, and kind of, understand where we want to go. Any concerns, any questions? I don't know if Ruth Ann had anything either.
Volunteerism as well as our paid coaches, because we're such a growing community. So thanks for that.
And I think everyone understands, we have a successful lacrosse program that's been clubbed for a long time. There's a lot of issues that we're really looking at as a board and going, how do we make this work? But we have equitable issues. So if we add a boys sport, we add a girls sport, we have to look at more things than just one sport individually. So that's what this is really about, is looking at the totality of what athletics and extracurriculars in the district looks like, and how do we make sure that we're handling it and being fair about it and making sure we're adequately covered. So that's the intent of it.
And do we have the space to practice and things like that?
Yeah.
Space to practice, transportation, officials. You add a sport, you're adding a significant amount to the budget. There's a lot of other costs that a lot of people don't consider.
I liked the spreadsheet that it listed where those sports, whether it be high school or middle school, would be practicing at, as well as the hours on the field for the turf, because I know that's a concern to monitor that time as well. So I thought those were good points. I think it's a good place to work from.
Yeah, so as we get a fine tune, I appreciate, Madeline, the work you put into that. And we'll fine tune that down so that we get all the data. I think Kim was updating some of the pay to play fees and stuff like that with the newer numbers, and as we get the athletes. But I think it's going to be a good conversation for us because, as you said, we're really watching how many hours are on the turf. So we have to watch how many teams participate on the turf. All of those things that occur is what has to be looked at. I did have a question about our small bus, I'll call it the
MVP.
Yes, the MVP. What condition is that in? Is it still usable
It's
for
still-
how long?
Still in like new.
Okay.
It received quite a bit of use by our wrestling team initially when Mr. Fresh went and became certified. Because as you know, with driving this, it's like driving a bus. You have to
Yeah.
go get certified, and CBS can provide that training. We need employees to step up and volunteer. But even with that, then you're limited to the 9 students that you can take in the bus to any event. So it's been used by our FFA to go to conventions. Certainly not this last year because they were canceled. But we can use it for various things there. But we need to really take a hard look at how it's being used and look at any alternative ways it could be used, either for transporting people or transporting goods. So we have some options there, but it's in great shape. No, it's been kept in great shape.
I just want to make sure we're maximizing that. I didn't know who all used it. Does the golf team use it ever, or?
Because we don't have the certified driver,
Okay.
it would mean that our coach would need to go get certified and then be able to take up to 9 students. And I think there's more than 9 students golfing, certainly between our 2 teams.
Did they always play on the same course each time, or I didn't know.
Practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're over the number.
I didn't know in like cross country when they split. Sometimes I didn't know if every sport. Sometimes they split and one goes one, and the other goes the other, and it's cross country. Okay. That's what I'd like to look into, is just to make sure we're trying to maximize use. The idea of that was to, utilize it for those sports that, one, cut down on our transportation costs, but two, to also be, cognizant of the riding a full bus for, 3, 4, 5 kids.
Sure.
Taking
And it
a full
can be
bus.
used for, if board administration, teachers, groups go out to look at programs in other districts and things like that, certainly we can do that so long as we have someone certified.
Okay.
I was certified. I let mine drop last year because of health. And last year I'm back, so I can go get certified again and be ready to drive this coming year. But yeah, because
And
of
I'm
my-
not, me personally as a board member, I'm not opposed to telling coaches when we hire them, like if that's something we expect from them, we just tell them right up the front when we hire them that you're expected to get your training on this. That way, if you need it, you can take it.
When we received that as a donation from Community Bus Services, the place that really helped us mostly was in wrestling.
Yeah.
Because Bob Presh would drive those teams pretty much. It saved us a lot on bus transportation when he did that. Not many teams you can transport with 9 or less.
Right.
That's the problem.
And that's why I was going to say, Kim, I just want to make sure we have a plan to replace that when it's needed and it's not. And then also, if we can look at what is the maximum size. I know at the time, but I don't know if regulations change. We want to make sure we can get the maximum number of seats when we do replace that. So if there's anything out there that holds 12 or 13, because a lot of times we're right at that number, that if you had 2 or 3 more seats, you could take it. So if and when we get around to replacing that, it'd be nice to make sure we're getting as big as we possibly can, but still have a non-CDL driver driving it, because that's really what it comes down to, is not having a CDL license to be able to drive that.
Well, the other thing to think about, just put it in your mind for thought, is if we find that there is such limited use passenger-wise, our other van is old. It's in disrepair. That's used to move equipment around for the teams. It's not going to last a whole lot longer. So one thought, not proposing this, just something to think about, we could take the seats out and use this as a utility vehicle for the district for many years. So that's another thing we could put on the table for consideration. But yes, I appreciate everybody's work on these numbers. We'll continue to hone them as they need to be. I just received today something I haven't put in your hands because, again, just came to me today as we look at coaches. We're handling some supplementals tonight, not spring coaches because they're still finishing up evaluations, but relative to fall and winter coaches, we're taking action on tonight. There have been in the past, and there continue to be this year, recommendations for some additional coaching positions. So I just want to make it clear to everybody, we want to get these numbers honed as best we can in the next week or so as we consider any potential increases in coaching positions at the July meeting. So we'll try to do that, and I have some documents here that I'll share with you that came to me from the athletic department this morning.
Appreciate that.
The only other thing I had a question on was on the expenditures. Is there a way to add a tab to the data so that is the expenditures the busing? I wasn't clear on what the expenditures were that was listed on the athletic data.
Is that umpiring fees and busing?
Total
Yeah.
expenses.
It would be a
Total.
total of the whole thing.
Are
The
you
bulk of that
suggesting
is the
breaking out
officiating and
transportation as a
busing. Is
separate
that the
item?
main
I
two?
think maybe we break out transportation as a line item so that we can see where.
Originally, as
don't
I
know,
was
maybe not.
explained, was the pay-to-play fees were supposed to cover transportation costs. That's kind of what the wash was, but whether they do or not anymore, I don't know. That's when I came onto the board. That's what was explained to me when they originally were put in place. That was kind of the concept there, but that's what I want to look at is what are those costs and what can we do to reduce those costs. That way we can hopefully reduce pay-to-play. And that's why if we can utilize that small bus and if we can do things like that, the money goes right back into the to the players and the parents so they don't have to pay as much to play the athletics. So that's ultimately our goal of reducing those fees.
Great. I have just one more item.
Did Ruth Ann have anything? I thought I heard her.
Ruth Ann, did you have something you wanted to say about the bus?
I was just curious, how many miles do we actually have on that bus? How I'm not sure how much use it really has had, and is it the size we want, or if it were a bit larger, would we have more call to use it?
I wouldn't hazard a guess here this evening as to the miles. I would guess, pure guess, we're under 20,000 because it really hasn't. It's made a few trips to Indianapolis for the FFA, Derek. Made a few trips over there, and some, like I said, the first year or two, a lot of wrestling meets. I think it'd be kind of hard to get more than 20,000 in the use that I have known it to be.
All right. If you would,
utilized.
just when you get a chance, check that and send it
Yep.
to the board, just to let us know how many miles are on it.
Other questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
One final thing under my report, just a little memento here before each of you, and Ruth Ann, we have one to give to you as well when we see you in person. There's a little item that we put out to all the staff this spring, just a small way to say a big thank you for all the effort this year, and felt that you as board members as well, you're part of the team. You made some tough decisions back in the spring, summer, fall, and they weren't easy decisions. And so I thought the sentiment on this stainless steel drinking device here, proud of the work we do and the difference we make. Our pride and commitment always come through in the difference we make and the work that we do. So it's just a small way to say, like I said, a big thanks for your support as Board of Education, for the initiatives we were able to put in place to make this year successful. So think
I
of us
appreciate
every
that.
time
Hey,
you
thank
take a sip
you.
of this.
Thank you. I'll write my initials on the top of that when I get home, so no one else takes it.
Good idea. Good idea.
Initials have to go. My son steals it if I don't put my initials on it. All right, on to your recommendations.
Yes, I'll run through my general recommendations first under item 9. A is to approve a 1-year renewal agreement with Four Seasons Environmental. This has been working very well. They come in and they provide a service technician to our district, comes in twice a week and helps with the maintenance of our HVAC systems in our new facilities as well as our middle school. They do a fine job. I've had our new facilities manager review the contract with me, and he has found it to be a very good contract at a very reasonable price of $49,476. By entering into agreements like this to have this type of preventive maintenance done, we save a lot of bills with other vendors and call-ins. So we're asking for your approval of this contract renewal for 1 year. If this can, we're going to continue to analyze this as Mr. Jenny gets more informed about our systems, and he will continue to look for more economical ways and potential partnerships with other districts. We've talked about a lot of that, and look forward to seeing his recommendations a year henceforth. Under item B, asking you to approve that overnight field trip for the Big Red Band to go to Disney, Universal Florida, December of 2022. And that would be recommended by Mark and Angela Zarelli, our directors, who will also serve as chaperones, and will have other approved chaperones by that time. But they need approval to go forth with their fundraising efforts over the next year to get our band on another trip. It's just really nice to see them travel, and you get that band up to 170 to 200 players on the field. It's impressive. To watch them go to Chicago in the past and down to, well, they played at the Outback Bowl 1 year. It's a joy for them, and so I ask you for your approval of that trip. Under item C, we're asking you to authorize the construction of a 30-foot by 20-foot food service, cold and dry storage prep pole building adjacent to the middle school kitchen at a cost not to exceed, and again, we can talk about this amount, the cost to run option B that's been presented to you in your read-ahead materials would be a maximum of $120,000. And for those who are watching online, what this building, the need for this building has been generated by the increase in participation of our students in food service. And we have been obviously serving a lot of meals without charge, and the federal government's been reimbursing us for those meals. It's created such a demand that our middle school serving line area has actually become a mini kitchen. It's not big enough to house the products, and there's too much being sold, eaten, let's say, to prepare elsewhere and bring in and keep it hot and in accordance with health regulations. Therefore, there's a need for a refrigerator and a freezer, a large one, walk-in, to accommodate the supplies needed to feed the children at the middle school. Well, we don't want to just stick a refrigerator and a freezer out back because there's also a need for some dry storage. So we are minimally approaching this problem by asking the board to approve a small pole building that would go over the top of the refrigeration and freezer units. Also allow for shelving and dry storage and a sink as well, so food can be prepped in there and taken through the back door and in to be served. What came to light today was Mrs. Pulley did receive word back from the federal government that said, yes, indeed, this would qualify because, in essence, have we not had the pandemic to create the meal programs that are currently in place, you wouldn't have this type of demand. Let me qualify that statement, however, and tell you demand has been increasing anyway prior to COVID because Max prepares some darn good food. Nevertheless, this kind of took it over the top, and Max was very challenged going into this coming year. It's going to be tough to get this done before the start of the year, but with your approval this evening, Mr. Jenny will go use his contacts to try to make that happen. I would ask the board that if indeed, when we get to this point of discussion and a move on this consent agenda, you might want to discuss whether you want to take this cap on up to 130. Should we need to use prevailing wage? The ruling is that we would on any project over $2,000. So when you get to action,
And that's because it's ESSER funding.
because it's federal dollars,
Yep.
100% of this would be those federal ESSER dollars. We do have them in the fund to be used after we've taken care of the other priorities we've discussed over the past few months relative to personnel and programs. So we would recommend it being covered by that use, and it would continue to serve us for many years. I think it'd be a wise use of those dollars, but we would need to bump that cap. And Mr. Jenny, if you could give me a nod, I went back and ran those numbers again. You believe that 20% of the labor cost would more than cover the prevailing wage requirement. So when you look at this program, 40% of the total cost will be labor, 60% materials and supplies. So if you take 40% of the labor, it's around 48,000. Take 20% of that labor, it's 9,600. Therefore, we're asking you to consider 130,000 cap on this project if you should decide to use the federal dollars. Sorry for the lengthy description, but I want you to accurately know what you're voting on. Under item D, to approve renewal of our property auto liability insurance coverage for 2021-22 with the Ohio School Plan. This is our current provider of insurance. The cost went up minimally, and the costs were in line, according to the treasurer, with our increase in appraisal values of our property. Anything else you'd like to add on that, Ms. Pulley? Okay. Under item E, we're asking you to appoint the following persons to the Johnstown Joint Recreation District Board of Trustees for terms as listed in accordance with the Village Johnstown and Johnstown-Monroe Local School District Agreement and bylaws that we passed back on March 8th. Ed Baldwin, we're asking you to approve a 2-year term, and Keith Ryan, a 1-year term. Both are residents of our school district and meet the qualifications expressed within the bylaws of the Recreation District, be informed. The village is doing the same thing. They're going to be appointing 2 individuals, and then those 4 individuals, when they meet as a board of trustees, will appoint a 5th that meets the qualifications of the bylaws. Under item F, to approve the purchase of 20 Como interactive instructional boards for the middle school classrooms to replace old outdated projectors at a cost of $61,080 to be paid from ESSER 3 funds. Once again, I think I shared in ed briefs, these are projectors that are at least 8 years old. They were not part of our new building project. They're the oldest ones in our inventory. You have some smart boards still in the rooms, and they're not used as much anymore because technology has just passed them by. These Como boards, and I think the board members and administration have sat in on the original review of these various instruments like this. As we went into online teaching, and our teachers have looked at about 5 of these in use, they are incredible machines, very interactive. You name it, you can do it on this machine. Teachers can present live. They can draw on it and send it automatically to be saved or email it to people. Students can come up, work on the board interactively with documents that are downloaded. It is an incredibly smart instrument. So we do plan on recommending going forth that as we replace projectors, we would replace them with this type of technology, as it is cheaper than the projectors we put in our new buildings already. So it's a wonderful technology. I think Ms. Boer, you sat in on the committees that reviewed these, and this was the one that the committee liked the best. We've had one set up in the central office as well, which we've used in meetings if you want to see it in action. But we believe it's time, now that we have these ESSER dollars, that we use them wisely, something that's going to continue to give to this district and save our general fund at the same time. Again, these have been approved as meeting the ESSER requirements for expenditures, and I recommend them to you this evening under item F. Those are my general recommendations this evening.
In other words, how long do we have yet to
When do they have to
spend
be
that
expended?
money?
Yes, we have a 3-year period of time. We must file our plan for use of those, i.e., a little later in the agenda under personnel, we're looking at the math instructor at the elementary to help meet our 20% requirement for gap closing efforts as part of that federal program. But we have the next 3 years to spend the dollars, but we must, before July 31st, say it again, please.
August 24th.
We must, before August 24th, submit our plans as to how the money will be used, and we cannot change after that date. So we've been working fast and furious to try to identify those areas budgetarily, program-wise, and staffing-wise that we can best use these dollars, Ruth Ann.
Since we have 3 years, are we thinking about the intermediate school, as we don't have any equipment in there as yet?
Yes, Mrs. Seibel is shaking her head, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. These are great boards. They're wonderful.
Yes, if I might ask, as part of this report, before they get into motion, Ms. Pulley, if we were to make expenditures using these ESSER $3, because we've expended most of the 1 and 2 funds, or earmarked them, and we took action tonight on the staffing and these boards, can you give us an idea of the remainder amount? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I know you've been running those numbers.
That was my question. You sent us a spreadsheet today.
I
And
did.
I don't know what was included in that.
It's the
other
old
than
one.
these
These
two.
boards are included.
Okay.
It originally included 2 math instructors for 2 years. We've revised that to 1 math instructor for 3 years. But I have not updated it yet because we did the as-needed nurse and the long-term substitutes out of those. So after tomorrow, we'll have the final numbers on what
Gotcha.
those expenses were, so I'll have a much better picture. So hopefully by the end of the week, I'll be able to share that with you. And if we do pay for the food service building out of this, I would say we're probably relatively close to, yeah, there was 157 left with the 2 teachers for 2 years. It would probably be a little higher with the 1 for 3.
And we're allocating about $180,000
The
between these 2.
60,000 for the Cuomo
is already
board
in there. So it's the 120 to 129 that's not. So
Right.
that would put us
30 to
within 30 or
50,000.
40,000 of expenditures. Did everyone hear that? If we approve this tonight, we'd have about $30 to $40,000 left in ESSER 3 funding to allocate by August 24th.
Does that answer your question?
And the CFOS intermediate boards are already included in that number.
Are there any other items that anybody has suggested? If we had 30,000 left, is it something for that money?
No one has suggested with the remainder amount yet. I know we've kept in our mind. I think early on there were some discussions relative to HVAC systems in our renovated buildings. And I think we determined that any expenditures had to be related to COVID. and that any difference between our HVAC systems that were placed in our new buildings and what's going into the Searfoss building that might be put in place relative to controlling COVID. That could be extra devices for filtration or airflow. Our current buildings are very sufficient this year with the turnover of air in the classrooms. But if we were to look at, that was one idea that was expressed, Ruth Ann, I think you were involved with that conversation. We certainly could keep that open for that 30,000 to be applied to, but honestly, I just don't know what we would put in place. We'd have to rely on the architect.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
I'll
To
make a
discuss?
motion with the amending item C to 130,000.
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion on any of these items, A through F?
On item C, I did hear you say that we're going to put a sink in, so we're going with the plan. Initially on the ad briefs, I saw there was an A and a B. We are going with a plan that is putting plumbing in.
That's what was communicated back to me as I studied the responses from my read ahead materials I put out to the board. Mr. Jennings was kind enough to divide that out into two because originally we had no plans to run drain, but the difference in price seemed to be reasonable, and if that can provide a good way to prep materials and it meets the letter of the law with the health department, I think we'll be good to go.
Ruth Ann, did you have any other questions?
Thank you. That's excellent. We're having a lot of opportunity to do those.
Yeah, it's a sink. Basically, you know, as they're preparing vegetables and cleaning things, there will be a place there that they can come out of dry storage, come out of frozen storage, refrigeration storage, prep the materials before they take them on into that small serving kitchen now that we call it. So I think it'd be most helpful and worth the dollars put into it for now and the future, because we're not getting any smaller.
I did want to mention under item E, Keith Ryan is here. If you want to say hello to everybody. I do appreciate you applying for that and the work that'll be going into that. I did want to let the board know and the community know. So the plan that we discussed with the village is the 4 board members after they're appointed tomorrow night by their council. We're going to get, I believe his name was Mr. Smith out of New Albany that ran their joint Parks District to come present to the 4 board members and then anyone from the public that would be interested on how they got started, what they needed to do. That way we give you a little bit of guidance as to how that district will operate. But from this point on, while we appoint board members, we are hands off in the sense that we have no fiscal or personal responsibility for that. You guys begin running the district and make those decisions. And we simply have a 2-year, 1-year agreement, you know, to get them in off years. That way they can be appointed 2 or 3, you know, per year. So I do appreciate Keith, you applying for that and stepping up, because it's going to be a heavy lift to get some of this stuff going, but the community needs it, and it's recognized. So I appreciate it. Ed Baldwin's not here, but at least I didn't see Ed. But I appreciate his efforts as well, and we look forward to that. So thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Are these the only boards that need to be replaced at the middle school? We just needed 20.
That will take care of us completely,
So they'll
correct,
have-
Mrs. Seibel?
All the rooms will have the latest interactive boards.
So that folks can understand what's being said at home, it's being reported by Mrs. Seibel that this would cover all projection needs within the building, with the exception of the music room, which we need to analyze the need for a maybe larger board, given the number of students served in that room.
Thank you. Any other questions? We can call the roll.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas, yes, Mr. Swager.
Yes. Thanks, Han. You're doing a magic trick over there, holding it down, putting it back up. I appreciate that.
She keeps plugging it back into her charger.
Someone posed.
She keeps plugging her charger back in, but the charger's not plugged into the.
We'll make it.
On to your recommended personnel.
Yes, this evening, Mr. Swager, I have a number of personnel recommendations, as is typical for this year, this time of the year. So I will go down through those as briefly as possible. We have been quite busy, starting right before the end of the school year and through June thus far, with staffing changes and interviewing and recommendations for changes to better meet the needs of our students and community. And so some of these reflect that work that's been ongoing, and I appreciate everyone who's sat on these committees. We've taken an exuberant amount of time to vet candidates, many candidates, and conduct interviews to get us to this point. We have more work to do for the July meeting to close this out and ready ourselves for the fall. But the following are what I have for you this evening. First of all, under item 10A, to accept the resignation of Kelly Small as EMIS Data Coordinator, effective May 25th. Under B, to accept the resignation of Ms. Kelly Byers as Coordinator of Student Services. Under item C, to accept the resignation of Judy Scholl as High School Secretary. I might add, Judy has served this district faithfully for 47 years. So kudos to Judy. Under item D, to accept the resignation of Carrie Slag as High School Intervention Specialist. She's taken a position elsewhere. Under item E, to accept the resignation of Madeline Travis, Athletic Director, Dean of Students. We certainly thank you for your service. You're here this evening, Madeline, and wish you well in your new position. Under item F, to accept the resignation of Miss Debbie Merrill as halftime middle school athletic coordinator. That should be 0.50, not 0.05, at the end of the 2021 school year. Under item G, to accept the resignation of Jen Villa as high school student attendant, pending approval of the board, approval this evening of her as becoming your new EMIS data coordinator contracted service. Under item H, to approve the following teachers for the high school summer in-person credit recovery instruction that's ongoing currently, to be paid $200 a day for a maximum of 10 days. That's Ann Bahari, Mike Bumbaugh, and Polly Prouty, Kirsten Spade, and Stephanie Stuckey. Under item I, to approve a half-day, May 7th, 2021, unpaid leave for Debbie Hayes. Under item J, we're asking you to approve the following certified positions under the contracts as listed. This is Mr. Apis and Mrs. Cohen, whom you met earlier. Under item K, asking you to approve the classified positions, of which there's one this evening to approve. That is to approve Jen Villa, who was previously a parapro attendant in our high school, to approve her as EMIS data coordinator. Under item L, asking you to approve the following supplemental positions for employment contracts as listed. I won't bore you by reading each and every one. You've had this in advance to look at, and you know about the one change for a weight room supervisor I spoke about heretofore. Under item M, to approve the following pupil activity positions for employment contracts as listed. Again, the previous two motions I'm bringing to you deal with fall and winter for the most part. We are still finishing up evaluations of spring, and we'll have the remainder of our recommendations on supplemental contracts ready for you by July board meeting. Under item N, we're asking you, the board, at your request, we've looked at the data relative, and we shared that data at the last meeting, relative to the needs of our student in math and reading in particular, K through 8. And it was our assessment that we could utilize an additional math specialist for a period of no more than 3 years to help us close this gap and to use ESSER dollars for that position. And So we're asking your approval this evening to authorize that position, at which time tomorrow we would post and seek candidates for said position. Under item O, to approve the revised job description for EMIS data coordinator position. I think you received in your read-ahead materials a red mark document showing our current and how we're changing it, along with a final document, which is what you're being asked to approve this evening. Under item P, you will find a recommendation to employ Mr. Guy Williams as your coordinator of student services, as has been presented to you prior. Those are my personnel recommendations for this evening.
Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Wait a second. Discussion.
Just want to thank Judy for her 47 years of service. That's great. She's going to be missed. She's been a staple at the front desk of the high school. We
Yes, she has.
appreciate her.
Yep.
Resignation. I guess that's not appropriate, right?
It's appropriate. It just won't be accepted, I'd say. Any questions, comments, all these coaches? I'm just assuming someone went through and did all the groups and steps and looked at all of that.
That's
I don't have a clue.
when they were reviewed is when we caught the one error. And
Okay.
so, yes,
It's just a lot to go through.
Mrs. Pulley, Mrs. Lowe, and myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there's still an error in there, well, it
You'll
happens.
find it, yeah.
We'll correct it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer? Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swagger?
Yes. And welcome aboard, sir. Any committee reports? Anyone? Did Ruth Ann have anything?
Do you have any committee reports? Yes, ma'am.
Then don't speak. No.
Dave, would you step forward to the mic, please? And I just want to say, as he's walking up here, Dave has done a remarkable job and bringing great value to our district already. And Ruth Ann has asked for an update regarding the bidding process on the renovation project. Just
And I
kind
don't know
of,
if everyone got, Dave sent us a little synopsis of it, which was very helpful. I mean, not to, your expertise and experience on the backside and knowing how exactly what to look for has been superior for us. So I do appreciate that because while I've been on the construction side, you've been on the actual building side. So that certainly, you know, the ins and outs, and that's a very big advantage for us, especially during the bidding process. So that is very helpful to us, and I believe we're meeting tomorrow to discuss it further. So I appreciate that.
1 o'clock.
Yes, 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Yes.
And
He's gonna
I'm
be
sorry,
early.
I'm about half deaf. I'm pretty sure I heard what Ruth Ann was asking for. The basic review of where we stand with the CMR project at this point. Robertson has, without getting too far down the weeds, Robertson has fulfilled all except 2 of the bid packs at this point. I believe they're down to 1, but I haven't seen the recommendation to award as of today or the payment. But with those bid packs, again, we'll go over the numbers tomorrow at 1 o'clock. But, in a very challenging market, which is incredibly challenging at this point. They are slightly over where they carry their GMP, which they are committed to holding that GMP number and making up the difference out of their CM contingency money. So, you know, we can kind of get down into the actual numbers that are associated with that. But bottom line is they actually started some of the demolition today. We did some selective demo by removing some of the ceiling tile and surplus. So we're actually engaging the project and getting into actually buying out those individual
packages by issuing the contracts. So it's a very good team I think they put together. Got better bidding than what I would have expected in this environment, in this market. So again, I'll kind of go over those details. The bottom line is the project is officially moving.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I was pleasantly surprised by the bidding, to be honest. Yep.
Numbers were high, but they had a lot of activity, much more than I expected.
Thank you.
People will start seeing safety fence go up, I think I read Wednesday.
I believe they're starting to saw them out there today, kind of laying out, so I think they're going to be putting up a permanent fence, which will be a panelized system.
So it'll begin looking like a construction site, so everybody knows. And again, Dave, thank you. As you come in, nary a day goes by that I don't get an update report on all departments and the progress on work. It's been exceptional reporting, and you can tell he's been a project manager a long time because he can lay it out with the best of them. So really appreciate your work, the work of your maintenance team, and what you've got custodians to do, and keep it up. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Any old business, new business? This time I'd like to go into executive session, if we can get a motion for executive session for personnel. We may have action afterwards, correct? If I can get a motion.
I'll make the motion.
We can get a second. 7:35.
And we can recess to the library.
Yeah, we're going to go over to the library. Yep.
You can rewind Facebook later.
Yes.
Debbie, Kim, I, and would you like Mr. Busenberg?
I second. Yes. I think we
Yeah,
have
we
to
got a
take
couple for part
do
of
we
it.
have to
Yeah.
take a vote?
Start with
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Do we have to take a vote to that? Oh, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis? Yes. Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. And we're just going to move ahead. Yeah, we're just going to.
Library.
the board meeting right now.
Open session.
Open session.
What do we have to, going back into open session? What time?
9:56.
9:56.
Mic's on.
My mic's on. Yours,
Mike?
everyone, mic's on?
Yep, yep.
Deb, are we live? Good. I guess what motions are we going with? With I need a motion for a one-time lump sum payment of $500 to what classifications are we calling? It's both.
This is
So
classified and administrators.
classified and administrators.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes, and I do want to thank the classified and administrators. This matches the payment that was given to the teachers in their recent contracts. So I want to just, we're extending that to everyone that worked during the COVID year. That's what that money was used for, and we were using the ESSER funding to support that payment. So I do want to thank everyone for that as well. Thank you. The next one is to discuss the pay increase for our, let's do
Classified.
classified. If I can get a motion for a 2.75%.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
If I can get the roll call, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes. And that again mirrors what we've given. So that's a 1 year. Yeah, 1 year. And then on the administrative side, if I can get a motion for a 4% pay increase on the administrator side.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion? I just want to thank the administrators again, and those listening. The administrators are the only group that don't have step increases built into the contract. So the other ones, all of our teachers in our certified or classified, they have step increases that occur every other year, roughly, that raise that more than what the base increase was. So the 2.75 that we just approved for those includes step increases that are in their contract. The administrators don't have that, so therefore that's why there's a larger sum being given out to the administrators. It is actually less than the average of the steps and the percentages, and that's what we were in discussion about. So I just wanted to clarify that for anyone that's listening. If I can call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes. And do we have action on the positions? Do we need action on that, or will that be later?
Do we need action on positions?
The AD. Do
AD,
we need
do you
an
want
action
Oh,
on
we got
that?
post tomorrow, one way or another.
Do we
Okay.
need?
Just need to authorize the splitting of the positions into two.
Okay.
And authorize the secretary.
Do you mind writing up something for me to propose?
A motion to separate the dean of students, high school dean of students and athletic director into two separate positions.
Okay, and you'll have the pay scales and the classifications brought to the board prior to approval of filling either of those
July
positions at the July meeting. Okay. If I
I'll
can get
make
a
the
motion,
I'll second.
discussion? I think everyone knows the growing district, some of the issues. Our current position is vacant for the second year in a row. The duties have kind of become so much that we feel the need that there is to separate that out with the athletic department continuing to grow and then the student side of it continue to grow. The goal of this split is to get our athletic director focused on the athletics, and then the dean of students and our principal, our superintendent into the classroom more. That's what you'll see in some of these changes, is that the principals will be hands-on in classrooms a lot more often, getting them more into the curriculum side rather than into the administrative athletic director or discipline side. So that's the goal of splitting these two out. If I can get the roll call, please.
Mr. Benton,
Yes.
Mrs. Boer,
Yes.
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Swager.
Yes. Motion carries. Anything further?
I think how about the parapro secretary? Do we want to do that one?
Oh, did we finalize that? Are we good?
I'm good. I'm good with it.
Are you good with you?
I couldn't hear what the issue was.
The parapro secretary position?
To just change it to secretary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. If I can get a motion to
Reclassify.
motion.
reclassify the parapro in the athletic department to a secretary to fit more in line with what the actual skill set and demands are.
I'll motion.
If I can get a second.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you.
And then if I can get a motion to adjourn.
I just want to say
Oh,
one thing.
go ahead.
We were remiss, and
yes.
Chris, Mrs. Almendinger, the middle school principal, brought us the April and May issue of the newspaper, the Johnstown Rebel,
Oh.
and we did not get to cover that during open session. I just want to thank her for doing that. I want to thank the students and Mrs. Dotson for putting this together and working with the students. And I did have a chance to read this quickly, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful for a middle school newspaper. And I want to thank them for bringing this to us tonight. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
It's did a great job.
Yes, appreciate that. And
Yes,
I'm
very
looking,
much. Thanks
this
for
will
bringing
be
it up.
very full with coffee in the
Yes.
morning.
Appreciate that. Thanks. And now if I can get a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion. Thank you.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer? Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
10:03.
10:03. Thank you
All right.
and good night.
Thank you.